The girl, the dog, and the silence. The courthouse in Clearwater Bay was old, its walls steeped in decades of justice, scandal, and whispered secrets. On this particular morning, as sunlight spilled through stained glass windows and cut across mahogany floors, the room held its breath. Something different was about to unfold, something no one expected. At precisely 9:01 a.m., the double doors creaked open, and stepped a small girl, no taller than the judge's bench microphone. Her steps delicate but purposeful. Her name was Aria Langston, 5 years old, and in her right hand, she held the leash of a large brindled Belgian Malinois named Valor. What caught everyone off guard wasn't just her appearance, it was her silence. Not a word, not a greeting, just those enormous hazel eyes that scanned the room, locking briefly and unflinchingly on the man seated at the defense table. His name was Daniel Voss, a 47-year-old civil engineer with a spotless record and a calm, forgettable face. Today, he was on trial for a string of attempted abductions that had shaken Clearwater Bay to its core. There was only one eyewitness, one voice the entire prosecution hinged on, but that voice had been silent for months. 2 months earlier, the day it all changed. Before the horror, Aria was sunshine bottled into human form, curious, chatty, and endlessly imaginative. Her parents, Tasha and Marcus Langston, had moved to Clearwater Bay for its promise of safety, community parks, and quiet streets. It was the kind of place where neighbors waved and kids rode bikes until dusk. On the afternoon of June 11th, Aria was playing in their backyard, twirling in a sea of dandelions, her pink overalls speckled with grass stains. Tasha watched from the kitchen window, laughing at her daughter's antics while stirring a pot of soup. Her phone buzzed, a call from her sister in Portland. She answered and stepped into the hallway, her voice trailing behind her. It was the 4 minutes that would change everything. When she returned, the gate to the backyard was ajar. Panic struck. Tasha dropped the phone. Aria was still there, but not alone. A man crouched beside her, whispering with a voice too smooth, too friendly. "I've got baby turtles in my van. They need someone special to care for them. You like turtles, don't you?" Aria didn't scream. She didn't run. She froze. Then a voice, an older woman's, firm and shrill, cut through the air from across the street. "Hey, get away from that girl." Startled, the man jerked back. Aria's body snapped into motion. She broke free, sprinting toward her mother just as the van's engine roared to life and peeled away, leaving a trail of burned rubber in its wake. That was the last day Aria Langston spoke a single word. Present day, back in the courtroom, Judge Elliot Monroe, a stoic man in his early 60s with silver hair and a gaze that could pin any lie to the wall, watched Aria carefully from his elevated bench. He'd presided over murders, embezzlements, and corporate betrayals, but nothing had ever felt as delicately precarious as this trial. Seated to the left was Assistant District Attorney Pilar Chen, a razor-sharp legal mind with a reputation for dismantling even the most ironclad alibis. She was the one who fought for Aria to testify with Valor present, a therapy dog trained for trauma response, and a retired police canine with scars to prove it. The defense team, led by Nathan Dorn, had objected fiercely. The presence of an animal implies the child is in danger, he argued. It prejudices the jury and creates an emotional response irrelevant to the facts. But Judge Monroe overruled it. Aria wasn't here to dramatize. She was here to survive. The first signal, as Aria took her place in the witness chair, the room held its collective breath. She didn't speak. She didn't look at the jury. She sat perfectly still, Valor at her feet. Then, it happened. Her small hand made a subtle motion, barely perceptible. A flick of her wrist, a curl of 2 fingers. Valor's ears snapped forward, his muscles tensed, and a low, resonant growl rumbled in his chest, not loud, not threatening, just resolute. Every head turned. Judge Monroe leaned forward. ADHN froze. The growl continued, unwavering, aimed directly at Daniel Voss. Voss's face, normally impassive, twitched. His jaw clenched. His tapping fingers stopped. The silence in the courtroom was electric. Judge Monroe's gavel came down hard. court will recess for 15 minutes. Unraveling the silence. Outside the courtroom, Arya sat cross-legged on the hallway bench, her arms wrapped around Valor's thick neck. Her mother hovered beside her, gently brushing hair from her daughter's forehead. In the corner stood Detective Liam Nash, lead investigator for the Clearwater Bay Police, a seasoned officer with creased eyes and a weary soul. He had a gut feeling he trusted more than DNA. He leaned toward Monroe, who had stepped out for air. "That dog's been quiet all morning," Nash murmured. He didn't growl when the clerk dropped the stack of papers, not when the security alarm glitched, only when that guy looked at Arya. Monroe exhaled, his breath fogging the glass of the hallway window. "Dogs don't lie," he said simply, the nightmare behind the smile. Daniel Voss was no stranger to hiding. In his world of spreadsheets and zoning blueprints, he was invisible intentionally so. To neighbors, he was friendly, quiet, helpful. No one suspected the storage unit he rented under a false name, or the cabin in the woods an hour outside the city technically unlisted. But Arya had seen him. His crooked pinky, the little freckle under his eye, the van, the turtles were a lie, but she remembered everything. She just couldn't say it, not with words. Valor's bond. Back when Arya stopped speaking, Tasha had nearly crumbled under the weight of helplessness. Every therapy session ended in silence. Arya didn't draw, didn't sing, just stare out the window, flinching when engines revved too loud. Then came Dr. Evelyn Roche, a child trauma specialist, who recommended Valor. He was semi-retired, his hind leg slightly stiff from an old injury, but his instincts were sharp. And when Arya met him, something flickered to life. The first sign of healing wasn't a word, it was a whisper of a smile, a crayon sketch of a girl and a dog. Back to trial, the tension peaked second time Arya made the signal. Valor reacted even faster as flat, shoulders squared, growled deeper. Daniel Voss shifted visibly, beads of sweat gathered at his temples. Ader Chen stood. "Your Honor, we request a brief sidebar." A hushed conference followed. Chen's co-counsel, Ravisha, whispered urgently, "We just got the forensic report back from the soil samples in Voss's van. Traces match unknown abandoned cabin sites suspected in other missing child cases." Monroe nodded. "You have 24 hours. Recess granted." The cabin. The next morning, Nash and a tactical unit moved in on the coordinates. Valor was with them. As the team approached the rotting structure, the dog's demeanor changed. Low whimpers, sharp alertness. They found the door to a hidden cellar beneath warped floorboards. There, huddled in the corner, chained and filthy, was a girl. Alive, 8-year-old Maya Jennings, missing for 6 months. As Nash scooped her into his arms, tears streaked down his weathered cheeks. "Thank you, Valor," he whispered. The final blow. News of Maya's rescue hit the courtroom before the next session began. When Voss entered, he looked pale, drained. Judge Monroe's voice cut clean through the tension. "Mr. Voss, with this new evidence and a live witness, do you still wish to proceed?" Voss hesitated. Then, slowly, his voice cracked. "Yes, I wish to change my plea." Guilty. Gasps filled the room. Reporters scrambled. Arya looked up. For the first time in months, her lips moved. Not words, just a whisper to Valor. "Good boy." Epilogue. A lesson in silence. Daniel Voss was sentenced to life without parole. Maya Jennings was reunited with her family. Arya eventually found her voice again, first in whispers, then in laughter. She and Valor became inseparable, visiting other trauma survivors as a team. At a press conference months later, Judge Monroe addressed a sea of microphones. Justice doesn't always speak loudly. Sometimes it growls softly. Sometimes it waits in the eyes of a child and the loyalty of a dog. Lesson: silence does not mean weakness, and truth, no matter how deeply buried, always finds its voice, sometimes through those who cannot speak, but still know how to be heard.